Back again with another episode of the GCN Tech Clinic, where you submit your problems down there in the comment section and I do my very best to help solve them so you can go out riding your bike and having fun with your friends. So if you've got a problem, leave it down there. Let's crack on with the first question this week, and it comes in fact, it's two here. So I'm going to try and join them together a little bit and then solve it. The first one is from John Schmitz, who has a problem with their chain goes slack when they stop pedalling. Whenever they go to freewheel and let up off the pedals, the derailleur swings forward and the bottom portion of the chain goes slack, then it swings back into place. Camille also has a problem that sounds very similar. So the Freehub body doesn't do any clicking noises when they're freewheeling and the chain gets slack. Looks like the Freehub body is sticky. How can I help? Right then, Camille, yeah, you're right there. The Freehub body, I reckon, is sticky here. So best thing to do, take out the axle, take off the Freehub body and give it a good old clean up. Make sure that it's absolutely free of any gunked up, sticky old grease in there, because that can make the pulls of the Freehub body actually not spring on the tiny little springs that are inside of them in most cases. And then that goes into the ratchet mechanism of the actual hub shell itself. So yeah, those pulls then just unable to really fully engage there, and it can actually be quite dangerous, especially if you're out the saddle and you try and sprint and it ends up spinning around. So yeah, have a look at those tiny little springs, and they are quite fiddly, so take them out one at a time and just make sure they're nice and free and not full up of any really thick grease, because they can get ever so mucky in there. And then before reassembling, just apply a very thin amount of just some thin grease, so all-purpose grease, not too thick. That's really important because you don't want it to get gunked up again. So just a small amount, refit it, and you're going to be good to go. In the worst case, some Freehub bodies, they do just tend to just give up. Basically, you have to buy a new one. But I reckon you can both have your problem solved by doing just a little bit of preventative maintenance along the way. Next up is Janosch. Now Janosch says they recently purchased some nice, shiny, lightweight quick releases. After racing a crit, they realised their front wheel was rubbing on the brake caliper. Although they tightened them pretty hard, do I have any tips or tricks to hold the wheel in position? All right, Janosch, I am going to give you some advice. And you're not going to like it, I don't think. The advice is going to be go back to your original quick releases. I have experimented plenty and plenty of times with some lightweight quick release skewers for racing, and I've always found you just can't quite get adequate clamping pressure from them. They always feel just a little bit too fragile when tightening them up, and sometimes it can actually be, they're so light, especially if they're made out of titanium, titanium actually stretches. So whilst you're tightening it, it's not doing the job of tightening as well as a steel skewer might be. This is the reason why we see all the top professionals in the world, even on their mountain bikes, generally use the standard quick release skewers. Whereas they could actually save a little bit of weight by going for a lightweight one. Go ahead, do that. Also, if you are convinced you want to stick with them, make sure when you put your wheels in your bike and you tighten up those skewers, you're not doing it in a work stand. Instead, the bike is on the floor. That way, the gravity is actually going to be pushing the bike down and the wheel is going to be finding its natural centre in the dropouts before tightening them up. And yet you can apply quite a good amount of pressure on the skewer, so you want it to leave just a little bit of an indentation really when you do it up to make sure it's nice and tight. Next up is Justin, and Justin has got themselves a 2012 Cervelo P2 tri-frame. Got it as a frame and set up with 10-speed Ultegra group set. It's a great bike, however, Justin doesn't compete on it and mostly just uses it for city riding. Is the frame capable of being converted to a fixed gear setup? Oh, Justin, yeah, it would be suitable. Something to be aware of though, the rear end of that bike is going to be spaced for a 130mm hub, whereas track bikes generally tend to be 120mm, some are 110. So this is going to be a bit of a stumbling block. So if you try to fit a standard track hub in there, you are going to be crushing in those rear dropouts a little bit too much for my liking. Instead, get yourself a 130mm over lock nut distance rear hub, suitable for a fixed gear setup. They are available, there's quite a lot of them out there actually. Pretty cheap, normally about £50. So go ahead and get one of those. Something to be aware of though is also the chain line from the front to the back, because obviously that bike is designed for a bike with derailleurs. But with those 130mm hubs, they generally tend to have a few spacers in there as well. So actually, when you put the fixed gear sprocket on there, you can actually push it out a little bit to get a perfect chain line, or as good as can be. Nothing really much to worry about there. If you are worried, go for a eighth of an inch chain setup. That's what I always use on all my fixed gear bikes, and I think it's just a little bit more secure, and the chain just seems to sit on there a little bit better. It's really hard to explain. People often ask me that, what's the difference between 3/32 and an 1/8 inch chain, and 1/8 just feels a bit more rough and tough, I guess. Right, Jack 42 Frost. Jack 42 Frost? I don't know, anyway. Jack Frost, it's cold outside. Here's your question. Now, Jack finds it more comfortable to point their road bike shifters slightly inwards, almost towards the front of the wheel, rather than straight ahead. Is there a reason they shouldn't do this? Oof. Well, I guess your handling could be compromised slightly. It's very hard to know, really. I've never actually tried angling them in. I always have them directly going forwards because I find that just a bit better to steer the old battleship around when I'm riding. Rather than going inwards, I can imagine that just being a little bit extra pressure on the tops of your wrist there. Something also to consider is that if you are to hit a hole in the road, a pothole, our roads are in a pretty bad state. If you've got your hands like this, for instance, so pointing straight forward, there's a little bit of buffer room there onto the actual hoods, whereas if your hands are going inwards, very hard to demonstrate, they could just simply fall forwards and you could go forwards there too, as opposed to having that little bit of a buffer room. So that's the only reasons really I can think of. A little bit of extra stability, cornering if they're going straight ahead, and also a little bit safer. Right, Helicase21 wants me to walk them through chainring and cog compatibility for single speeds, especially when it comes to 1/8 of an inch versus 3/32. Right then, put simply, you can run an 1/8 inch chain on 3/32 chain rings and sprockets. It does tend to be a little bit noisier, and you can feel a little bit of kind of just where it's not meshing perfectly, in my opinion. And on the flip side, you can't use 1/8 inch sprockets chain rings with a 3/32 chain. It's simply too wide for the job, and it's not going to work effectively at all there, and it just doesn't engage properly. Now, what do I prefer? I like to use 1/8 inch chains with either 3/32 chainring and sprocket, or 1/8 inch chain and sprocket, chainring and sprocket, sorry. I just find it, as I've already previously mentioned, just a little bit tougher, it seems to feel. It maybe has a little bit extra resistance, or possibly that's just in my mind, because it just tends to be a little bit louder, but it's traditional, it's cool, I like that behind it. But the funny thing is, I bet you a 3/32 chain is probably just as good, if not better, because, well, they're more modern, aren't they? So there's probably a lot more research gone into them recently. But yeah, the choice is yours, but stick to those guidelines. 1/8 of an inch chain works with 1/8 of an inch sprockets and chain rings, as well as 3/32 chain rings and sprockets. But 3/32 chain will only work with 3/32 chain ring and sprocket. There you go, that's the compatibility done. Right, next up is Yannick, and Yannick wants some help changing their 2x setup to a 1x setup. They currently have Shimano Sora. How do they do it? Right then, nice and simple this one. Take off that front derailleur, also remove all your chain rings and also your gear cable for the front derailleur too. And then replace those chain rings with a single chain ring, preferably a narrow wide, and attach it using some single chain ring bolts, so not something for a double chain set. It depends exactly on the chain line which you're going to be getting, where you're going to mount it, either inside or outside. If you're riding a lot off-road in the rear extremity, so like a 32 setup there at the cassette at the rear, or 30, I'd probably mount the chainring on the inside to get a better chain line, but ultimately it's not going to be pushing it out that much. It's going to be nice and simple on that one for you. Next up is Robert. Robert's in a bit of a dilemma. Hi John, I have an O2 Pinarello Prince and I'm considering changing the entire original group set from a Shimano 105. Do I go mechanical again, or do you think Di2 is a possibility? Love the tech channel. Right then Robert, this one, I absolutely love Shimano Di2. And you could in fact put it on your bike. You could have the cables mounted externally. They are really neatly covered up with some specific Shimano Di2 cable covers. The battery will be mounted externally as well, that kind of thing. Alternatively, I do in fact know people out there who, with older carbon frames, they have in fact drilled holes in them and put the cables internally. I'm not a structural engineer when it comes to cycling, so I wouldn't like to actually recommend that, but I have seen it done. But I'm in a bit of a dilemma here, like you are, because that new Shimano 105 looks absolutely fantastic. But something also to consider is that the bike is fairly old. It's 16 years old now. By putting a Shimano Ultegra Di2 group set on there, that is going to push up the price of that bike quite a bit. So it is something to consider there. Might want to look at a new bike with 105 on it, because maybe it'd work out about the same. I don't know. There's all sorts of deals going around, especially leading up to Christmas. People want to get rid of stuff. Let's put this one to the viewers, in fact. We've never done this before in the Tech Clinic. Up there's going to be a poll. Should Robert go for Di2 or should Robert go for the 105 new mechanical group set? Robert, it's up to you then, mate, if you listen to us or if you make your own mind up. I love Di2. Penultimate one, Jeppe Anderson. I've got a question about chain lengths and cassettes. I'm currently running an 11/28 cassette with 50/34 chain rings. I've also got an 11/30 cassette which I'd like to use. Any chance I could run both cassettes with the same chain? Right, Jeppe, 99% certain this will work. Unless someone has previously fitted that chain really, really short. And you'll be able to tell that if you put it on the big ring and you put it in the big sprocket at the rear. And if that rear derailleur is really, really tight, which it shouldn't be. So in other words, it's really far extended along beneath that chainstay. Pretty sure it will work absolutely spot on. Okay, final one this week is Landor. And I really don't like it when I come to the final question because I love helping you folks out. Right, anyway, Landor, back to build themselves a new bike based on a titanium frame. They've been told of dreadful creaks or parts getting stuck. What kind of grease should they use to avoid things like the seat post or bottom bracket getting seized? Is copper paste the right solution? Right, personally, I would use either copper paste, anti-seize, or tie prep you can also get when fitting any metal components into a titanium frame. Because the thought of getting any of those stuck in there absolutely fills me with horror, because it could be a very expensive repair job or, well, going to a specialist to have them removed, which no one wants to have done, do they? In fact, a little bit of a tip here, every 3 months, just remove those components, recover in whatever you choose to use, and then refit, just to prevent any corrosion or anything like that happening there. A little bit of a tip here, copper paste and those other types of preparation compounds you can use for titanium frames are absolutely filthy. And when I say that, I mean that if you get them on any of your clothing, they are really, really messy and they often don't even wash out. Get them on your mum's carpet at home and, well, not only do you get yourself a clip around the ear, but also you get yourself a mucky carpet for life. So just bear that in mind. When using that stuff, take extra special precaution. Wear some gloves, please, because even trying to get it off your skin, that is a hassle. Right, there we are, the end of another GCN Tech Clinic. And well, if you've got yourself a tech-related problem, leave it for me down there, because I want to help solve it so you can go out having fun with your mates on your bike, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Remember as well to like and share this video with your friends, give it a big old thumbs up, tell everyone all about it. And now, don't forget to check out the GCN shop at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. It's coming up to Christmas, and well, treat yourself to a little goodie. Why not? You deserve it. Also, for another great video, click just down here.